In the freezing dawn of October 1870, near Lethbridge, Alberta, an old Cree elder named Peopo stood tall in a heavy bison robe, his left hand gripping a carved wooden staff, his right resting on a weary horse. His scarred face showed deep worry as he warned 300 young Cree warriors about his dream of disaster. They wore leather tunics and red war paint, ready to avenge 50 stolen horses and 20 dead kin from Blackfoot raids. Ignoring him, they marched to the Belly River, where 500 Blackfoot fighters waited with 100 rifles from Hudson's Bay traders. By night, 200 Cree lay dead, their blood soaking the riverbank, as historian Hugh Dempsey notes in the great Blackfoot Treaties. What pushed these warriors to reject Peopo's vision, and how did losing 200 men in one day change the Cree and Blackfoot nations forever? The Last Stand at Belly River, survival and slaughter on the plains. Setting the stage, a land of struggle and rivalry. In the late 19th century, the northern plains of Canada were a tough place to live. This huge area covered what is now Alberta and Saskatchewan. It was home to indigenous tribes who depended on the land for everything. The most important resource was the buffalo. These animals gave them meat to eat, hides for clothes and tents, and bones for tools. But by 1870, the buffalo were disappearing fast. Historians estimate that the buffalo population dropped from about 30 million in the early 1800s to just a few thousand by the 1880s. Overhunting by indigenous groups and European settlers caused this decline. With fewer buffalo, tribes had to fight harder to control the best hunting grounds and trade routes. Two big groups stood out in this struggle, the Cree and the Blackfoot Confederacy. The Blackfoot Confederacy was made up of three nations: the Siksika, the Kainai, also called the Blood, and the Piikani, split into northern and southern bands. Together, they had around 15,000 people at their strongest in the mid-1800s. The Cree were part of a different group called the Iron Confederacy, which included the Saulteaux, Nakota, and Métis peoples. The Cree alone had about 10,000 people, but their allies made them a bigger threat. For years, these two groups had been raiding each other. The Blackfoot often had the upper hand because they had more people and better weapons. By 1870, they had over 1,000 rifles from trading with the Hudson's Bay Company. The Cree had some guns too, but they still used bows and spears more often. This rivalry came to a head on October 25, 1870, at the Battle of Belly River. The fight happened near where the St. Mary and Omen rivers meet, close to what is now Lethbridge, Alberta. It was the last big battle between indigenous tribes in Canada. Historian Hugh Dempsey, in his book The Great Blackfoot Treaties, says this battle was the end of an old way of life. European settlers and diseases like smallpox were already changing the plains. The Battle of Belly River was a final, bloody clash before that world was gone forever. The Omen of Peopo, a warning unheeded. Before the Cree went to war, an elder named Peopo had a dream that scared him. He saw a giant buffalo with iron horns charging through their camp. It trampled people and left death everywhere. To Peopo, this was a sign from the spirits. In Cree culture, dreams were a big deal. They believed dreams could show the future or give advice. Anthropologist David Mandelbaum wrote in The Plains Cree in 1940 that Cree leaders often used dreams to decide what to do before hunts or battles. Peopo told the war party, about 300 young men, to call off their raid. He said the dream meant they would lose. But the warriors did not listen. They were angry and wanted revenge. The Blackfoot had been attacking them for years. In 1869, just 1 year earlier, a Blackfoot raid killed 40 Cree and took over 100 horses. Losing those horses made it harder for the Cree to hunt and move around. The young men saw this raid as a chance to hit back. They thought Peopo was just an old man afraid of change. They cared more about honor and survival than his warning. This choice shows how hard things were for the Cree. Historian John S. Malloy, in The Plains Cree, Trade, Diplomacy, and War, explains that they were stuck. They wanted to follow their traditions, but they also had to fight to stay alive. Ignoring Peopo was a risk they took because they felt they had no other option. Looking back, it raises a question. Could listening to him have saved them? Or were they already on a path to war they could not avoid? The answer came soon enough. Alliances and animosity, power built on trade and blood. The Blackfoot Confederacy was a strong alliance. The Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani worked together to protect their land and people. They controlled a huge area full of buffalo and close to trade posts. Their deal with European traders gave them a big advantage. By 1870, they had about 1,200 rifles and 500 revolvers. These weapons came from the Hudson's Bay Company, who traded guns for furs. This firepower made them tough to beat. The Cree belonged to the Iron Confederacy, which was not as tight-knit. It included the Cree, Saulteaux, Nakota, and Métis. They had some guns too, maybe 300 rifles across their group, but they were not as well armed as the Blackfoot. Their alliance was more about trade than fighting together. Sometimes they argued over who was in charge, which made them weaker. These groups had been enemies for a long time. Raids happened all the time. In 1869, the Blackfoot killed 40 Cree and stole 100 horses. That attack pushed the Cree to plan their revenge in 1870. But it was not just about pride. The buffalo were running out and European settlers were moving in. Historian Hugh Dempsey says in Firewater that these pressures made fighting worse. Both sides needed the same land and resources to live. This was different from other indigenous fights like the Sioux and Cheyenne against the U.S. Army. In the U.S., those tribes teamed up against settlers. On the Canadian plains, the Cree and Blackfoot fought each other, while traders sold weapons to both. This made the northern plains a dangerous place, where every raid led to another. The fatal misstep, a plan that fell apart. The Cree had a plan. They wanted to attack a small Kainai encampment of about 40 lodges near the Belly River. Their scouts said it was alone and easy to hit. With 300 warriors, they thought they could sneak in, attack fast, and get out before anyone could stop them. They hoped to kill some Blackfoot and take their horses and supplies. The Cree had a plan. They wanted to attack a small Kainai encampment of about 40 lodges near the Belly River. Their scouts said it was alone and easy to hit. With 300 warriors, they thought they could sneak in, attack fast, and get out before anyone could stop them. They hoped to kill some Blackfoot and take their horses and supplies. But they got it wrong. A much bigger Blackfoot force, over 500 warriors, was camped just a few miles away. Blackfoot scouts saw the Cree coming and warned their people. This mistake was deadly. It was like when General Custer misjudged the Sioux and Cheyenne at Little Bighorn in 1876. Both times, not knowing the enemy's strength led to a massacre. At first, the Cree did well. They moved in at night, quieted the dogs, and started attacking. They cut into teepees and killed people as they slept. Men, women, and children died in the chaos. But then the sun came up, and the Blackfoot struck back. Chief Mountain Chief led the charge with over 500 warriors. They had help from Jerry Potts, a guide with Scottish and Kainai blood. Potts knew the land and how to fight. Historian John C. Ewers, in the Blackfeet Raiders on the Northwestern Plains, calls Potts a key player. He told the Blackfoot where to go and how to trap the Cree. Soon, the Cree were surrounded with no way out. The battle's fury, a day of death and desperation. The battle started on October 25, 1870. It was loud and violent. The Cree had the upper hand at first, killing many in the small camp. But when the Blackfoot arrived, everything changed. They brought rifles, some of them repeating guns like the Henry rifle. The Cree had mostly bows, spears, and a few old muskets. Historian Alexander Johnston says the Blackfoot fired over 5,000 bullets that day. That kind of firepower was too much for the Cree. The battle started on October 25, 1870. It was loud and violent. The Cree had the upper hand at first, killing many in the small camp. But when the Blackfoot arrived, everything changed. They brought rifles, some of them repeating guns like the Henry rifle. The Cree had mostly bows, spears, and a few old muskets. Historian Alexander Johnston says the Blackfoot fired over 5,000 bullets that day. That kind of firepower was too much for the Cree. The fighting was messy. The Cree tried to hold their ground near the river, but the Blackfoot kept coming. They shot from horses and closed in fast. The Cree started running, crossing the river to escape. The Blackfoot chased them, shooting as they went. George Bird Grinnell, in The Vengeful Wife and Other Blackfoot Stories, says people who saw it remembered the river turning red with blood. It was a terrible sight. When it was over, the numbers told the story. Between 150 and 200 Cree were dead. The Blackfoot lost about 40 warriors. The Cree's best fighters were gone, and their families were left with nothing. For the Blackfoot, it was a win, but not an easy one. This battle was not about glory. It was about staying alive in a world that was getting harder every day. Aftermath and legacy, a bitter end to an era. The Battle of Belly River hit both sides hard. The Cree lost up to 200 men, almost two-thirds of their war party. Whole families were broken, and their communities could not recover easily. The Blackfoot lost 40 warriors, a smaller number but still painful. They kept their land for now, but bigger problems were coming. Smallpox had already killed nearly half their people in the 1860s. By the 1880s, Treaty 7 forced them onto reserves. Settlers took over the plains, and the old wars stopped. This battle was the last of its kind in Canada. It ended the time when indigenous tribes could fight each other for control. But it left big questions. Were the Cree wrong to attack, or did they have to after years of Blackfoot raids? Both sides killed women and children in these fights. Historian Sarah Carter in Lost Harvests says this was normal in Plains warfare. Survival was all that mattered, and everyone was a target. The Battle of Belly River shows how tough life was back then. It was not about heroes or villains. It was about people trying to hold on to what they had. Today, it reminds us of their strength and the cost of those times. The plains are quiet now, but the story of that day still echoes. The Battle of Belly River was not merely a clash of arms, but a profound collision of dreams, pride, and desperation that marked the fading of traditional plains warfare. For the Cree, the battle was a costly misstep, driven by a thirst for retribution that led to devastating losses. The Blackfoot, though they emerged triumphant, found no lasting shelter from the storms gathering on the horizon. Disease, disappearing buffalo, and the steady advance of settlers loomed ever closer. This moment, etched into the history of Alberta, became the last great intertribal conflict in Canada, leaving behind a legacy of sorrow and shattered communities. Yet, amid the wreckage, the resilience of the native peoples stood firm, their cultures and spirits enduring through trials that would have broken lesser hearts. What can this bloody day teach us about the fragile boundary between vengeance and ruin? And how do we pay tribute to the native peoples whose courage and traditions outlasted such chaos? Their stories, woven into the very earth of this land, speak of a strength no battle could extinguish. They remind us of a legacy we must hold dear, a living lesson in endurance, an honor that continues to shape our understanding of the past and our hopes for the future.